All right, so my name is Devin Williams. I am co-owner and CEO of a New Way Counseling Center on Greenwood, and I'm also founder and owner of DW Speakeasy on Greenwood. I'm also the founder and executive president of One Tulsa, 501c3.
And so, Devin, why are we here today? What's going on?
So basically, it's been my life passion, my work, what I've dedicated the past 10 years of my life to, honestly, to restoring Greenwood, coming here, and rebuilding after, all the stories that we've heard. And unfortunately, I've found that might not be a possible reality anymore down here. And so I guess I could start the story. I was born in Guthrie, Oklahoma, outside of Oklahoma City. I was a smart kid. I got in a lot of trouble. I grew up around a lot of trauma, a lot of systemic issues in my area, extreme poverty, violence, very situations in a climate that's similar to, maybe the North Tulsa community here. I was one of 6 kids at my mom's house. She was a single mother, so we didn't have a lot of food, didn't have a lot of, honestly, anything. So I worked really hard in school. I loved school. It was a place that I got to kind of make my own. And so that led me to Oklahoma State University. I went originally pre-med. I had a 32 ACT score. I had a high IQ score growing up. I was in the gifted and talented programs, and so I wanted to be a doctor. That's all I wanted to be. My tour guide freshman year was actually Nash McQuarters, who is from the Tulsa McQuarters family, and he ended up becoming one of my mentors. There were several, black organizations that I wanted to join. He had experience with a lot of them, and so he was mentoring me in my freshman year, and he mentioned the Black Wall Street Massacre for the first time. And so this was, I would say, fall of 2010 was whenever I heard of the historic Black Wall Street Massacre, and by that next year, I'd switched my major to applied sociology. Once I heard that news, it pissed me off, and I had been someone that had already encountered a lot of racism, encountered a lot of systemic issues. I felt like, once I could accomplish it, let me rephrase that. I had already encountered a lot of systemic issues in my life. I'd already seen a lot of things that weren't fair for my people, and so once I heard that there was a case like that happened in Oklahoma, that there was a massacre of that magnitude where so many people died, and not only that it was able to be covered up that easily. I thought I was a history buff, and so it just really rocked me to my core, honestly. And so I switched my major. I went into applied sociology. I went into psychology. I really wanted to learn more about what was happening in our country. Right. I didn't know where that was going to really take me. My dad was against this. Everyone was against it. I was always this smart person that was supposed to become a doctor. That's what everyone always told me. But for some reason, social action just spoke to me a lot more. I eventually graduated at Oklahoma State. I didn't really know what I wanted to do else. I thought about doing federal FBI work, maybe, just to impact my community. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but that was during the Trayvon Martin time. And so I then went to Langston, OKC for my master's. I didn't really want to be a street cop to work for the FBI, so I wanted to get my master's there. I guess propelled me in this field. While working there, or while going to school in Langston, going back to Oklahoma City, I started working at a psychiatric facility in Oklahoma City. And so then that really opened me up to therapy, mental health. I really started seeing trauma in kids. I started really understanding generational trauma a lot more, and that became my passion from then on out. And so I eventually graduate in Oklahoma City. I'm engaged at this time. I'm marrying somebody from Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. I'm gonna buy her grandparents' house in Muskogee, Oklahoma, but I knew that I was committed to Greenwood. And so before moving from Oklahoma City, I actually applied for a New Way Counseling Center. It was located on Greenwood. I met the owner and the co-owner. It was father and daughter. They were both white, but they said something that really stuck with me at the time. And Richard Asiri, who founded a New Way on Greenwood 12 years ago, he had a belief that it was white Tulsans' responsibility to make up for the massacre. And it was the first time I actually heard a white person say this, and he was just like, it was us who did it. We continue to benefit from it. And so it's our responsibility to come back. And that's why he chose to, found his business on Greenwood and deal with kind of all the issues that everybody else deals with, but he just continued to kind of pay his lease and stay in the background and just kind of be an ally. In that interview, I was like, well, this is where I want to be. At this point, I had just got my master's. I was the youngest LPC candidate in the state of Oklahoma at this point. And so I knew wherever I wanted to go, it needed to be important. And so I came here. I still lived in Muskogee, so I drove every day. I ended up having a son, so I dropped him off at daycare and came up to Trace Academy for 2 years straight, didn't miss a day. I poured into hundreds of kids. I saw many go to prison. I saw a lot die. And that's where we founded our therapeutic classroom program. The owner's daughter, we're now business partners. Our program went from 2 to 3 rooms back then, and now we're over 21. We have 55 therapists currently, over 10 interns. So we are the largest business on Greenwood. There's not a lot of exposure. If you look at the Greenwood Business or the Women's Business Center picture before the elevator, if you peek behind it, you can see a new, AN. And so that's really the only anything that I guess a New Way gets. A New Way is actually currently flooding due to just building issues. And so we can head over there and you can see that. But I did a build out over there before building the Speakeasy. And so anyway, I'm on Greenwood, but I'm working up north for 3 years, and it's great. Our program's thriving. We're hiring new therapists. Things are blowing up. So we get to the point where the building is already, at this point, depreciated. At this point, I was on the 2nd floor above the Speakeasy. So we're on this side still with my counseling agency. The bathrooms are wrecked. They're not being cleaned. There's mold in places. There's flooding, ACs going out for weeks at a time, heat's going out for weeks at a time.
And what year was this?
This year would be this is 2017 to 2020 was when this was happening. We still weren't in any of the political things yet. We were just a begotten tenant upstairs paying our rent religiously. The first time we haven't paid our rent over there was this month in 12 years, and that's because we have substantial issues over there that we can't even functionally use our office right now, much like the Speakeasy over here. And so for that 3 years, while we were growing, we saw the issues. And so this was around the time of the pandemic hitting as well. I was gonna get some PPP money, and that was money that I was gonna be able to use to kind of, navigate this. And so I wanted to use my money to help us move across the street. And so that was the first time I actually met Freeman Culver directly. I had only interacted with the chamber at this point through Richard Desiri, who had a very submissive relationship. He felt, he was an ally, but he wanted to, not ruffle any feathers. And so he wouldn't really speak up if there were any issues. He would just kind of send an email, but he was always, he was just always worried to be insulting. He didn't feel like it was his place. And so during this time, Richard also retired, and I stepped into the ownership group with his daughter, Sarah. And so once I took over, I wanted to address some of the issues that we've been dealing with. And so I met with Freeman Culver for the first time during this time, and I was just like, hey, we've already asked for things to be fixed. They're telling us no money. The new grants that come in, they don't address any of these issues, no money. And so I was like, well, we need a storefront. That way I can do a build out, and then my customers can come directly into my business. That way I can control their experience, because he might tell me no money and there might be issues, but customers don't care. They expect, quality of service, especially when you come to Black Wall Street. You expect Black excellence, not just, just whatever they can get. And so they eventually show me a space. It's 2 doors down from Wanda J's. We are currently there, but it's once you open the door, you go directly into stairs. It used to be where their welcome center was before it was on the corner. And so that was an area that it was rough, but we went ahead and did a build out. That was my first time. I tried to use the chamber has a group of guys that work for them. There's always, I said the chamber, excuse me. I cannot speak for the chamber at any point in this. Anytime I've talked to Freeman, he's told me that has nothing to do with the chamber. I have documents with them signing, but for mostly, I don't know who is even on the chamber. I've requested to meet with the chamber. I've requested to be in front of board meetings, but those have all been blocked by Freeman Culver. Once I've confronted him, I've tried to have conversations, in very public conversations. He's told me to email him. Once I email him, he passes me on to Andy Caldwell with a banker group, Caldwell Banking, I believe. Or maybe it's Andy something, but it's Caldwell Banking. Once I called him, he told me basically that he has no property management agreement signed. Freeman has, when we negotiated for the Speakeasy, he actually delayed those negotiations intentionally.
Freeman delayed them?
Yeah, Freeman delayed them. So I'm getting to the juicy part. We can go back to other crap later. But let me get on this stuff because we can cut, right?
Yeah,
I'm
good.
here. And so we'll get there in a second. All right, so listen, I'm going to get there because we have to go to Juneteenth because that's when everything goes down. That's when I uncover embezzlement. That's when I witness it for the first time. That's whenever, because if that doesn't happen, I don't get the Speakeasy. They didn't want me to get it. No, they were very clear they didn't want me to get it. But we have to backstory because people are gonna. There's characters in that story that haven't shown up yet. The chamber's a mess. I know I sound like it's a mess, but honestly, it's crazy. But so when so I meet with Freeman for the first time. And that was my first interaction with him directly, and it was awful. I was blown away because I was basically hey, your building is getting to the point where I can't run our business. We're a counseling agency. We have clients, we have patients, we have people coming in. It's a professional service. This is insane. He offered us a new rate. We were going to re-sign a new lease, and the new rate was the same. He basically told me it was a deal because it was the same rate that they offered people 10 years ago, and that property has gone up. And I'm like, well, you haven't invested anything in 10 years in these buildings, and so really your property is less valuable than it was 10 years ago. It should be lower. He was insulted at that point. Then I realized I'm dealing with a large ego here, and that if I'm not careful, no interactions are going to go well. And so I basically go back to the table with them. At this point, Larry Tees is there. Larry Tees is somebody who's told me he wants his name never to be said out loud, but he's in all of the emails, he's in all the documentation, and he's in so many of my interactions that it's impossible. And he's honestly the reason, without him, these buildings would have already closed because he is good-hearted. Larry is a great guy, and he's tried his best to keep things as clean as possible. But unfortunately, the longer you do business down here, the quicker you're going to get pulled into something that won't be legal, and they will have a lot of dirt on you. When they do that, things change. And so, but we'll get there again. And so at that point, I'm meeting with Freeman, and I'm just blown away. I'm like, why is somebody that is over this, talking about revitalizing this, talking about bringing it back, why would he be antagonistic to a young black entrepreneur trying to give him money? And so the battle is that I was like, I will pay for this entire remodel and update everything, build out, on top of the infrastructure that goes into this space. But I want to be able to have a reduced rate to recoup that money, and until that's paid back, then I'll go forth paying.
Since you're paying all the upfront
Since I'm paying
costs
all
of
the
the
upfront
remodel.
costs, right? I want to recoup that as a business, as a capitalist, of course, And he wanted me to continue to pay, and I'm like, well, the alternative is I can just go to another building, not have to deal with anything, a better space, actually cheaper, and you will lose the business. I'm trying to be committed to Greenwood here, but it has to make sense. I can't just update your space and you kick me out. And so he was just like, we're coming to that too. And so finally, through Larry, we get an agreement going. My emails are negotiated kind of through Larry. I've shared those with you. And we get the build out going. This is when we're introduced to a lot of his contractors. There's just different people that are on the block that do really unsanctioned work. And so we had some of we're trying to use some of their contractors at this point because we wanted to give our money back black, give it to Greenwood, follow the things you hear people preach about, One of his contractors broke stuff, stole stuff, There's still damages from what they did on our last build out over there. We've sent emails. We've even asked, I mean, there's in my business partner's office, and it's just like a strip of like paint or something that he did, but that was something specifically that she asked about, you know? And it's so small compared to the hundreds and the thousands of dollars that we're gonna lead up to. But that still hasn't been done, and it's been, 2.5 years. And so
this was in 2020?
Yes,
build out began?
Yes, that build out of a new way.
And the contractors that Freeman Culver and the chamber hired stole things?
Correct. But there's no accountability. I mean, you send one email somewhere and it just gets whatever. And cause damages. And then this same contractor, and so these are also people that are paid by CAM. We're gonna get to CAM in a second, but that was a part of this deal. So CAM is, honestly, in every lawsuit that's coming, CAM is gonna be, attorneys are gonna get tired of saying it because it's how they function. And so instead of charging us rent a lot, they charge us CAM. And they spell it CAUM, and so that's Common Area Maintenance and Utilities is what that stands for. And so kind of like an operating budget fund for them. Yes, but when they use it, it's a legal term and it represents things that they have to give us. Like once you charge for CAM, the electricity, the bathrooms, any staff that's needed. And so we all pay CAM, the business owners, the real tenants, not, because there's board members that have businesses here, and then there's tenants. We're different.
Oh, there's chamber board members that have businesses
here. Of course. Yes. And so, yes. And we compete with those businesses. And so when those grants come, they don't hit the tenants. They hit the other businesses. And so on the website, you can go to the historic official website right now, click our tenants or something like that. There's a link. You'll see Greenwood LTD, which that is what keeps coming up as the ownership rights to the buildings, not the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce. They are supposed to be just landlords, I guess. I don't know what they're considered, but the Greenwood LTD group is considered the ownership group that I keep getting back. And so that's a question that even in the lawsuit that I want to make, that it's become difficult because we're running into a liability handoff here. And so we don't even know who represents these groups. If you Google it, only Freeman Culver is listed. But we know that there are other board members or relatives of previous board members or whatever that by proxy still have businesses here. And so all these grant funds, I don't know where those dollars go because they don't go to the actual tenants who pay our lease. They go to businesses that aren't open all the time. And that's, to me, a big question that needs to be answered.
And so when you see these national reports talking about the Greenwood Chamber has gotten Black Wall Street to be registered as a historic place, millions in grants.
Right.
But you say that the tenants, the actual Black Wall Street business owners, aren't seeing any of that support.
Correct. We're not seeing that, and at the very least, our buildings aren't even being worked on. I mean, there's no AC or heat right now. So, I mean, I'm okay. And I want to say I'm a little bit of a special tenant when it comes to historic landmark designation because I actually helped them get it. That was my attorney. That was my architect and engineering firm. I was paying. And so that's another thing that is interesting with this project is Freeman would place people in front of me for me to use, and as they're getting paid by me, he's asking for auxiliary work and things to be done. And so I couldn't tell you how much that person, my architect, got paid, but his business is listed as one of the businesses in this building. And so if you go to their chamber website, you can look at the list, look at the business names, and some of them are real, some of them aren't. Some of them are call them, visit them, show up to them, see if they're there. But all I know is I don't know what happens to the money once it was there. And so basically, once I was investing in the Speakeasy, so we can just skip to this. Once I was doing this build out, it was a similar situation to a New Way. The deal was similar. I'm going to share my deal with you guys. You feel free to post the whole thing in its entirety. I'm okay with that. I told them that I wanted transparent deals because my idea was with this investment, other investors can know how to do it. I wanted to kind of create a blueprint for revitalization in these buildings. And a part of that was the historic landmark designation. And so my architect was heavily involved in that. His name was David Contreras, Phil Castile Consortium or something like that. I sent you that contract as well. And so I paid him upwards of $30,000 in this process. And what got us our historic landmark designation was actually this brick wall. And that's why you know it was me, because that's the wall that did it. This wall was one of the first rebuilt walls after the massacre. It's been here for over 100 years. It actually turned 100 this year. I did a small celebration for it. I cleaned it up. No one's allowed to really touch it or do anything besides, with respect. Like no one dances on or anything like that. But this wall got us that designation. And during that time, while I was investing in these buildings, that designation was told to me that it was supposed to give me tax credits for my investment. Because I'm putting money into an historic landmark and it's a nonprofit, it was going to give me really great tax cuts. I think it was 6 cents to the dollar, substantial. And then they also told me that the process for the historic landmark designation was we get accepted first, and we went through that process. And the next step of the process was for Freeman to get business plans that were going to go into the buildings, because the government, how they were going to do it, the federal government, because at first it was told to me that we get tax credits, and that was kind of weird, but then they told me something else after this. And I actually, not getting those tax credits, I made a business decision based off of that. And so that was a substantial hit
last year. Was it the chamber who told you would get
Yes. 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 It was told to me that with that designation, I would be getting those tax credits.
Was this after the designation had been approved, or was this before?
It was in the process. It was in the process. And the people that I'm paying are helping them.
Right.
And so, and I was okay with it but that's the point of a chamber, if they were actually doing what they said they were going to do, they were doing their job. And, they need to work with private investors to renovate these spaces and, promote Black economics. I was okay, and then they were also telling me that there was no money, the buildings were about to get condemned, the buildings were about to get taken and foreclosed. I cared about the district a lot. I didn't want to see the Greenwood Chamber fail. Not the people, but the chamber, because at this point it was told to me that they still own the buildings. They didn't own the buildings, and so that there was also a lie, because I thought I was helping the last piece of Black Wall Street staying Black. That's what I thought I was helping. And so when we got the designation, it was a celebration. I actually, if you go back to the interview that were made, this was around Juneteenth, I spoke at that.
Of 2021.
Of 2021, we're in 2021, yeah. And I spoke at that Juneteenth, I guess, press release. But that process hasn't been complete because that process that I was told at that point was that the federal government would basically give us the money to renovate the buildings and bring them up to a white box renovation, I believe, or white wall, where basically it's up to code. There's sprinklers, because we're supposed to have sprinklers. But it was supposed to bring us the sprinklers, update the AC and HVAC. I can show you where our boiler is from the 60s, but we haven't had updates in decades. And so even that
60-year-old boiler.
Correct. So there's not even, so you go call Air Comfort Solutions or any reputable person, they won't touch it. They can't touch it. And so the only contractors you get coming in these buildings are just kind of, whoever they can get. And those are the only people, and that's why I don't have any answers for a lot of the things that took place, because, there's a lot to that too. God, man, they suck. Where was I?
So Juneteenth 2021.
Yeah.
You're one of the speakers at the press release.
Thank you.
what happens from there?
So Juneteenth 2021, I'm heavily investing in my speakeasy already. I submitted my proposal to the chamber in February of 2021. I actually wanted to start a brewery down here. So, but then once we found issues with the building, there was no way it could support a brewery. And then I ended up wanting a space across from Lefty's, Suite 100. It's right there at that corner. At this time, it was called the Black Wall Street Alliance, which is an organization that has since disappeared. It was an organization that received a lot of funds, a lot of resources during that Centennial Juneteenth. But
when you say it disappeared,
I mean, packages were left outside because operations closed so fast. This same space is now Freeman's Event Center, a space that is the reason why my speakeasy is closed now. But we'll get to that too. So going back to Juneteenth 2021, leading up to it, the historic landmark designation was amazing. We were excited. I mean, I was like, okay, I'm really helping these people. They're listening to somebody. I've heard the rumors. I've seen their resume, but I'm like, okay, surely I'm only doing good here. I was told that my business would, my future business, because not only did I want this, when I had this plan, I have plenty of plans down here. I'm a serial entrepreneur. An Airbnb option looked really great for the second floor as well. And so whenever I was letting my resources be used, it was with the agreement that I would get further businesses here too, especially with something as great as that government option, because basically the government would renovate everything, forgive 60% of it, and the other 40% just had to be paid back with the businesses that would be in here. I mean, essentially it was going to be like I viewed it as like a Shark Tank for black people, and I mean, they would have to open up for all races, but it's kind of like a second coming of Black Wall Street. I thought it was going to be amazing, and then I got pushed out. And I have no idea what's happened since. Besides, I've seen grant dollars come, but
you got pushed out of the conversations around the historic designation.
Yeah, because I stopped playing ball the way they wanted me to play ball. And so, leading up to Juneteenth 2021, I start paying my architect in February and March. So he's already getting used. My lease doesn't get signed until July.
For the speakeasy.
For the speakeasy. I originally wanted to open up Juneteenth 2021. That was my first original opening date. And I had no idea. The chamber was delaying. I used an attorney because I've heard how the chamber was, and I'm like, okay, if I get them in writing, like they have to follow what they're supposed to follow. So I thought. So I used an attorney. I think I used Riggs Abney. I'm a Legal Shield member.
That's really good.
That was really good. If you're not a Legal Shield member, you need to do it. And then also I need things we haven't covered it yet, but I do have financiers that will come and finance me again. But my shit with the chamber has to be squared away. Because even if you add more money, because I thought I could, in this process, just honestly absorb the bleeding
and
keep on going and see the other side. That was the plan. But then they turned my
work like
off.
that.
I mean, it's like, there's no...
And I'm recording now, so you're good.
Okay, all right, so 2021, Juneteenth, and so as we're leading up to Juneteenth, the negotiation for the speakeasy contract are delayed. They're delayed immensely, because once I get that contract, the space becomes mine. I came to find out later that my space had been rented out and was being rented out the entire time during those negotiations. So I was in good faith negotiations. I was already investing on architects. I had construction people coming in here. I was already doing meetings, and the space was already being used. And so leading up to Juneteenth, I was still, at this point, didn't know that I was a fool, and I wanted to throw a concert on Greenwood. This has actually become the infamous Mario concert. I loved Mario growing up. I'm like, this guy's super underrated. I got him for the low, and I'm just like, okay, so I've already heard about these Chamber of Commerce battles. I've heard it. Freeman's told me a lot of stuff about previous people, that was horrible. And it kind of put me at odds with the other chamber during this time too.
The Black Wall Street Chamber.
The Black Wall Street Chamber.
So he tried to kind of get you to
have a negative view.
Oh, 100%. He told me a lot of horrible things about rest. I'm not even talking about, but yeah, he told me a lot of rest in peace. And they had no choice but to protect their causes against me as well. Like as I look back, which it shouldn't have been like this.
Because you say some of the board members also have businesses. Is that why?
No. It's just because with how antagonistic things can be and how combative things can be, whenever I was here with just a more altruistic view of just promoting for black people, I wanted here to be pro-black and put on for my people. Once I aligned with Freeman Culver, as he's moving, you know, I'm not hearing about the things and other things he's doing. And so all they see me as is just a new investor like helping him because he reaches out to outside groups that many people in our community wouldn't agree with. And so I became one of them, you know, and so that's why I didn't really blame them for what was happening. I anticipated, I expected it, I was okay. And so leading up to this, I invested in Juneteenth, 2021, I lost $38,000 that weekend. It's horrible, but the plan was that, you know, I donated $1,000 to the other chamber. It was asked of me,
Black Wall Street Chamber.
the Black Wall Street. Whenever I got to Greenwood, I was just like, hey, can we work together? This is Juneteenth, super excited. Like, what's going on? Like, I was in the meetings with Skipper Bain, and the Greenwood Chamber let me negotiate for them in this Juneteenth 2021. That was the reason why we had more things going on, is because they let me negotiate. And I was the first person to get the two chambers to agree on something in a very long time, and I was proud of that. And it was worth $1,000, like it was. And so they were gonna work together. The other chamber, because they had the entire street during, and this is another weird thing about permits in the city, they can only be owned by one organization. So the Black Wall Street Chamber owns the permit to the street. I was complaining to my chamber person, the Greenwood Chamber, because I was supposed to own my building. And so a lot of the events that happen on Greenwood, no one comes and talks to us. We're not just tenants, we're business owners, you know, with different needs. So high traffic benefits DW Speakeasy, but it doesn't benefit a new way. That's a counseling center. You know, parking leading up to Juneteenth was already sold too. Freeman Culver sold out our parking in 2021 as well to the people. So he told me he was insulted by the gentrifiers on the other side of the street. We're insulted by this museum, we're insulted by this, we're insulted by this. But then the parking lots were given up by him. At first they were private, so they were used by our tenants, our customers, everything. When they were building things, we started seeing, you know, we're gonna get parking tickets. And so I reached out to him personally and Larry and was like, what's going on? And they blamed the city. I contacted the city, I shared some of these emails with you, you know, going back and forth. And the city told me that they can't just come in and take private property, that the owners had to give them that. And then I asked if in these agreements, because they wouldn't give me specifics, but they would tell me about the policy, I said, is there kickbacks to the business owner? They said yes. So essentially the chamber sold our parking lots out to the other surrounding areas, although they're being antagonistic to them. So they can park here, but they won't shop here. And that's why these buildings fail so much. Is Mayfest, Legacy Fest, all these things go around, but no one gets to talk to us because there's kind of a troll under the bridge that blocks it. And so this Juneteenth is when I discovered how many opportunities people were trying to bring down here and how collaborative the city actually was. And it was eye-opening to me. And so the plan was, I had talked to Skipper, we had sent emails, we had confirmed the plan. All the events would go like normal, but the business owners, the Greenwood business owners, were the tenants. Essentially the other chamber couldn't block us from extending our business out 6 feet from our door or something like that. So basically we could get a vendor stand on our own property. Right. Because it's our business that we pay for every other time, you know, every other day we pay for it. And so that was established, I negotiated that. And so we had that every day. And on top of that, on Saturday, I was gonna have a concert. We're gonna have an agreement with an Archer. The other chamber was supposed to
Black Wall Street?
The Black Wall Street Chamber on Juneteenth 2021, they have the entire block. So if you have a permit, a special event permit, you have the entire block. And so you secure the entire block, you insure your area and everything. And so for the other chamber to shut down this chamber on Juneteenth, they have to pay for the protection. And this was last year's negotiations. I was not in this year's permit, so I'm only talking about 2021. I stay out of this year. I was like, I lost too much. Yeah, I'm staying clear. I just tried to stay, and I still had trouble. But we'll get to that in a second too. So Juneteenth 2021, the agreement was all of our businesses can operate. No one can say no, which I feel like is a fair thing. And so everyone had plans for Saturday's concert. I had already booked Mario. I had tickets printed, and I gave tickets to the business owners, for the Greenwood tenants / business owners that could support high traffic. Not everybody can support high traffic, so I don't want to send extra people to them, including chamber-owned businesses and non-chamber-owned businesses. If they can handle them, like, I don't care, because to me, they're just my people, you know? And so I gave them bundles of tickets, and with each bundle, they got like extra VIP and extra tickets. So it was like easy kickbacks. Everybody was excited. I was only going to sell these tickets at these businesses. It was a headliner. I mean, it was going to go great. I had worked with Star Fisher, was a special events director, she had some title with the chamber at this moment. That was the person I was supposed to work with. And the plan was, after 9, our street became ours again. I had my own security. My security was actually there at 6 or 7. My security was the security. There was a little, something happened, someone saw a gun or some outburst happen, and my security was the one that responded to it. And I actually had to tell them, like, hey, come back over here. Don't go over there. You know, like, I'm only paying you to secure this area. We're legally not even supposed to be over there with our, you know, our weapons and our security. So let's stay in our area. And so I secured the whole block, and then we were going to shut the block down at 9. And then it was going to be kind of our vendors, our tenants, us doing our thing. All the vendors we already submitted before, leading up, because you have to put those vendors, you have to put vendors on the insurance and everything like that. You can't just bring people, you know. And plans were going to go great. I was going to sell alcohol out here, or back at the Speakeasy point. At this point, I had an alcohol caterer coming in. We're going to sell food out there. Tickets were going to get sold. I think it was going to be great. So leading up to that day hits. I'm on Greenwood. The other chamber tries to block my show 3 times. They moved my stage location 3 times. When I say move it, we didn't actually have to physically move it yet, but like from policy. So we had city officials involved. I mean, it was chaos.
So why do you think they were trying to move the location?
They were trying to prevent my show from happening because people involved in my camp, or the people that were my landlords or whatever, they were using my show in a competitive and antagonistic way against them. Like, we're the real Juneteenth. So I was just wanting to have 2 stages. I got caught in the middle. Oh, I've been caught in the middle since this. I mean, I'm still in the middle. Like, and there's more now, you know, like I can't get out because so much money's tied up. But anyway, so they moved my stage location 3 times. We ended up finally stopping it. And things are going, and that's when Star Fisher tells me, because I'm having operations back here, I'm supposed to be selling alcohol the entire day. We have things. She was just like, well, you have a fashion show going on in your event venue right now. And I'm like, what? And so I head back here. The Black Wall Street Alliance had also had some type of art exhibit in here. They had printed off pictures and laminated them and posted them all over the wall. And then they had electric cords and light bulbs, Edison lights, similar to the look you see in here now, but it wasn't like official or safe or anything like that. I had paid an electrician $300 to rewire to get it all safe because I was going to have people in here. I paid for a cleaner, everything to get done. When I walked in this space, stuff was everywhere. It was trash. I had models all over the place, actual live human models, and they had a fashion show going from the hallway to kind of like fat guys completely cutting off my business. I was blown away. So I was just like, you guys gotta go. Like, I don't know who you guys are, but like, you guys gotta go. And so the organizer came up to me, and he was just like, hey, what's going on? Like, we have this booked, and I'm like, I have no idea who you guys are or who gave you permission to be in my space, but like, kind of get out. And I have operations going. At this point, I'm already $15,000 to $20,000 deep into Juneteenth. And so he leads me to the Black Wall Street Alliance in the corner of 100. And I'm like, what? And so I come in there, I'm like, why'd you guys get the permission? And I was like, you guys didn't tell them to go. And he was like, excuse me, but I don't appreciate your tone. And I was like, I don't care about my tone, like, you're in my space. And he says, why don't you take this up with the person that you have your lease with? So I took a step back and I was just like, A, how do you know about my negotiations? Because in my head, from all intents and purposes, like, this is my space, you know, everything's going, like, very verbal negotiations, like it's my space, we're just trying to iron out the details back here. So how would he know that? And he was just like, so I was furious. And this was Shane at this point. Shane and Lincoln ran that Black Wall Street Alliance and that space. And so I'm pissed. So I call Freeman immediately. And I'm just kind of like, how does this person know about my lease negotiations? Why is there something going on in my space? Like what the hell's going on? And I'm furious. Like, I'm furious. And he's like, oh, let me get Lincoln on the phone. Lincoln, before this, he had wanted to do a presentation on the stage, on the Mario stage. I had blocked anything from going on the Mario stage leading up to this Juneteenth. They wanted me to give them the key to Greenwood. I was just like, I'm from Oklahoma City. Like, I got a 405 number still. This dude's from Baltimore. Like, yeah, like, I'm not giving this dude the key to Greenwood. It's not happening. I don't think he should get it. It doesn't make any sense. And they're like, okay, we'll just give it to him in the background. And I'm like, whatever. And then they're like, oh, well, you know, Lincoln and Shane went under stage 2 of the Black Wall Street Alliance. And I'm like, part of my friendship to kiss my ass. They give me $500. Anyone that wants to get on that stage can pay me $500 because I'm already like $15,000 into this thing. You know, like, what the heck? And so fast forward back to that day, Lincoln's on the phone with Freeman. They like three-way call me. And I'm just kind of like, and then Lincoln starts kind of, I don't know, it's like giving me advice. It was very much like, he was like, well, Devin, you know, you got to work with people you don't like sometimes. And I'm like, why am I on the phone with you? Like, why are you guys in my space? Like, what is going on? Like, I'm not trying to hear it. And so Freeman's like, what can I do? I'm like, you need to move them out of my way. That's what you can do. And so the show goes on. My traffic's blocked. And that's whenever I saw the first round of Freeman's vendors. So vendors start showing up that were not on my list, that were not on the list that we talked about. And so these vendor spots were only created because of the negotiations that I had with the other chamber and the city of Tulsa extending our businesses. So we got to extend our businesses as vendors. So Wanda J's can have a Wanda J's vendor stand up front. You know, we could all do our thing, but other vendors couldn't come that weren't a part of that. It was kind of like a loophole. It actually was a secret loophole. And so Freeman went and sold out all those spots for vendors, including a New Way spot. So I own a New Way as well. We've been here for, at this point, 11 years. I was the one that negotiated that, and my business partner, our office manager, and a few of our therapists actually came to do some mental health, like give out some stuff, and this place was sold. And so he went and sold out all of those off the books, blocking my business for the day. And on top of that, as we go into the night, all these vendors were told that there was going to be a Mario concert late too. And that's why they paid so much. And so they, per the agreement, the city was clear except for my concert after 9. That was all that was supposed to take place. But because the vendors stayed there, my boundaries weren't able to go up. And so everybody got to walk up around. I had basically a little boundaried area in front of my stage. All the sidewalks had vendors, everything was flowing. No one had to buy tickets. And then the idea was like, well, I either let everybody in for free who has already not paid, to create a better crowd and a better experience, or I leave them all on the sides because they weren't going to pay anymore. And it was 100% because of these vendors and their locations, and we didn't follow the plan. And so I threw the free concert. And after that, all the people that were booked prior to Mario, what I now know about events and things of this magnitude is you actually sell those spots before a headliner. You don't pay. But I paid for all the openers as well. And so I'm telling you, I was just, that day, my Cash App was going, my cash was going, and there was no money coming in. My operations over here at the Speakeasy post Mario show, I did around $2,000 an hour for 3 hours. I made $6,000, but I had over $40-something thousand in expenses at that point. And so I took a couple of days of depression, I think, after Juneteenth 2021. I mean, it was a beautiful concert, but the next day everyone was talking about the key. He was, and Mario did not. I mean, there's more background on that. So I went, before the show, I met with Mario in his car. I had to give him the rest of his money. We chilled, everything was kind of cool. He was a really laid back person. Freeman was super, super excited before the concert. We met in the Welcome Center. The Welcome Center is something else I would like you guys to look into because that was a grant funded thing. And it doesn't even exist anymore, and I have no idea why that is. And so if you want information on any of these businesses, if you want to make contact with any of us, like that was the place that...
It doesn't exist. I had no idea it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist anymore. They moved some businesses from over... One of the businesses left recently because of the bathrooms and because of the hallway. I'm not going to shout them out, but they left, and then another business got moved into that one. But the Welcome Center doesn't exist. I mean, technically the Business Center or something else will be listed, but that's confusing. And that's another thing that's just an issue. Like you can't, there's not a sign with all the businesses, you can't even go. But anyway, back to Juneteenth. So I'm pissed right after Juneteenth. I take my 2 days of depression. I'm like, man, I lost a lot of money. Like, look my wounds. And then I'm like meeting with Freeman. This was the first time that I met Jackie Evans in person. This was a new, whenever I moved over there with the New Way, that was whenever the Blowout Salon battle was happening. I was fresh over there. I was just getting blown away by everything. You know, looking back, I might have handled things differently with the experience that I have now, but I was new to Greenwood politics at that point. And so that battle went down, and then board member Evans, he had that infamous interview, and I had seen, and he actually had come into my office multiple times and made very racist remarks, I'm gonna say racist, very prejudiced remarks against my business partner. She's a white woman, and he was always talking crazy to her. I'm talking about him more in a little bit, because around the Juneteenth time, he was in the Welcome Center, so he wasn't supposed to have any affiliation with the board anymore. They're supposed to have kicked him off publicly. Tori was just like, she made a comment like, no, he's not, he's on my final paperwork, this dude's still around. And that's kind of like the proxy nature of here. It's like someone could step down, but their interests are still obviously here. And so around this time too, former current board member Evans was in the Welcome Center. This was right after Juneteenth. And because even after Juneteenth, I don't get my lease signed. I talked to Freeman, I'm pissed. I'm like, he throws the Black Wall Street Alliance under the bus. He was like, I had nothing to do with this. I'm like, you can't just keep like holding your hands up when things go down. There's too much smoke around you. Like, this is BS. I'm gonna take you to court. Like, I lost a lot of money.
You mentioned that to him?
Yes.
And that was after Juneteenth 2021?
2021. Like, this was directly that next week. I had a meeting, sorry, Reverend Evans got me distracted, because that next week I met with Jackie Evans, which was a weird meeting. So they called me into a meeting. It's Jackie Evans and Freeman Culver, and I'm just like sitting there like, what's going on? And they started asking me questions about Juneteenth, like my liquor, did I have the appropriate permits? And I'm like, I went through you guys. Like, you guys told me all was good. Like, what are you talking about? It was like very much like trying to get dirt on me. And I'm like, why am I being interrogated? I just met you. And I'm like, what's your title again? And she was just like, oh, and I'm looking at Freeman like, who is this person? I'm like, why is she able to ask me these questions? Like, that's another thing. Like, you don't know who has power, who doesn't. And so I'm like, I'm done answering your questions, because I don't like this line. And then after that is when I met with Freeman. And that's when I got into it with him for the first time. And I'm like, hey, Like, that was BS. We didn't follow, like, what was going on. My stuff was cut off. He was just like, you know, Shane and Lincoln are doing this. They're stealing money. They're like, that was all them. I had nothing to do with it. And I'm like,
Basically,
threw them under the bus.
accused them
of embezzlement. And like quite literally to me. And so I told him, I said, if that's the case, because I was pissed because other business owners had told me like the entire like, because there's a common area hallway that we all pay common area maintenance on, right? Whenever they were operating the business, the Black Wall Street Alliance, there were tours given of our buildings and of different things. All those dollars, I don't know where they went. Maybe someone can ask the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce where those dollars went, and maybe do an audit and figure out where those dollars went. But they were restricting the building's use. We had a studio where her parents were being told they couldn't sit in the hallways while they're waiting for their kids' dance class because there were tours going on and they were in front of stuff. And we're the people that actually pay. You know, we're the tenants that are paying, not receiving grants, but this is our treatment during Juneteenth times and different times. Excuse me. And so Freeman throws them under the bus, and I was just like, okay, if that's the case, then I need you to call the cops, or you need to take them to court, because that's a crime, and that's how these things work. Of course he didn't do that, because who knows, you know, because that's the thing that I found out is he just throws somebody under the bus. I don't even know if these people did anything wrong, you know? All I can know is what he tells me. And then now our interactions. And that's another thing about Greenwood that we run into down here is we're all disconnected so much because we're getting told different things, and there's one common denominator that's involved in all of this stuff. And so, and then after that, I'm like, we gotta sign my lease. Like, we gotta sign it. And he's like, okay, we're gonna sign it. And he keeps telling me we're gonna sign it, but then there's delays. This is wrong. There was actually an event that was thrown in here after Juneteenth. The Monday I was depressed, there was an event that happened in here. That's like, yeah. Because I mean, these are always affecting my mental health. I mean, you're stressed, you're angry, you're upset, feel victimized. I mean, like you're constantly going through just a lot of range of emotions. And so after this time, I'm still in negotiations. I'm leaving the Greenwood Rising Museum at this point. You know, I went to their opening, something I got invited. It was pretty cool. It was like their soft opening date. I went and supported that. And as I'm leaving, I'm going on my car. That's when former board member Reverend Evans, he calls me. He's in the Welcome Center sitting down. So I go in there, and I'm like, I already don't want to talk to this guy. You know, he's already like talked a lot of trash to my business partner. I told her to tell him to F off. And I'm like, if you just tell him to F off the first time, I can help you after he says back, but I can't fight that battle for you, you know? But I witnessed him making comments. I'm like, you got to hold your own, you know? But at the same time, he's a disgusting person. And so I go and sit with him, and he was like, oh, I heard, you know, Freeman's not signing that lease. He said, I can get him to sign it, blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, I got an investor. And I'm like, I don't want an investor. I don't want a Greenwood investor either. And he was just like, what? I said, that comes with strings. And like, if I know something, like, if it comes with these strings around here, like, I don't want it. And he was like, oh, really? He was just like, me and Freeman were about to invest in that space back there. And I was like, what? And he was like, yes. He said, we had $50,000 to go back there, and we were partnering with another, rest in peace, the former late owner of ICE Event Center in Oklahoma City. So he told me that they were about to all partner. This space that we're in right now was about to be ICE Event Center Tulsa, if he didn't pass away. So with partnering with Freeman and this dude and Evans, which at this point I'm like, well, this is illegal, it's a nonprofit, but then I found out later it's not even a nonprofit, so it's like, it's not really illegal, it's probably more of the grants, I don't know. But again, I don't know what their books look like. I wish I did. I mean, it would answer a lot of questions where my money went to. But anyways, Evans has me in front of him, and he's telling me that they were investing in it, and I'm very much like not wanting to have this conversation, but I can tell that he's wanting to prove more and more and more and more to me how capable he is, how much money he has, how many resources he has, and I'm sitting there like this is sketch. And so I turned down Evans, And I think that if I didn't turn down Evans, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. I would have AC for sure. But I turned him down. I didn't like any of it. And I didn't want to get in bed too closely with the chamber. Like, I liked my agreement that I was trying to negotiate. I wanted very clear lines. That $50,000 thing didn't sound good. But that's whenever I found out that Freeman himself wanted this space and had an idea of this space. Every time I would send him ideas, and I submitted a lot of plans and ideas to the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce via Freeman Culver, different events, Oktoberfest, markets, all different types of things that we could do. And he always shut them down. And when the money came, I would see grants coming. I'm like, maybe we could use this. Like the Greenwood patio space, for example, had a grant that year too of like $20,000. So I submitted a plan to him, a $35,000 plan, where I would put $15,000 of my own money up, and if he put 20, we would have that 20 that he got. We could do a resilience mural on all the patio space. We would put a pergola over it, special lighting, and we could put a stage. I got 4 shrubs and 2 trees planted.
Out of the 20 grand.
Out of the 20 grand. They're outside right now. Another 15 grand got me a bench.
Wait, so you still went ahead and put your 15 grand in?
No, I did not. No. I mean, well, kind of. My patio furniture, like, I started doing things on my own.
I see.
Yeah, so, but then once, I'll get to that, because once things start going, my own investment, he comes in and ruins that in a little bit. And so 2021, I'm still talking to Evans. He's telling me about his money. I turn him down. And then a couple of weeks after that, this is late June, right before July, I'm in negotiations, like, what's going on? I'm already talking to Andy Caldwell, the banker. He's handling, Andy from Caldwell Banking, he's handling Freeman's negotiations. I got a bill for those negotiations a month ago for 10 grand that he hasn't paid in like 6 months, but that's what he sent that for. I've already talked to Andy, and he's like, you don't pay me, you don't owe me anything, and I'm like, I'm well aware that I'm not going to pay you $10,000. But that's a bill that the chamber sent me that they still haven't paid for last year. There's a lot of bills, and so anyway, I'm on a phone call with Freeman. It's like Thursday, 6:30. I'm leaving a haircut. Freeman's on the phone. He's saying he's going out of town, and that he wants to, if I can bring him the check, that he'll sign the agreement. And I'm like, what? So I'm on the phone with me, Andy, and Freeman, and he's going through the terms. I mean, he's really changed a lot of stuff that we've been negotiating. I mean, I'm going to give you a copy of where we were in the red line negotiations whenever I talked to Freeman in my final document, but it was horrible. I mean, like, looking back, I shouldn't have done that. But I don't know if I didn't do that, if I would even have opened, honestly. I don't know if he would have let me. And so I signed the agreement, and he wanted me to bring but he said, can you bring the check to me tonight? I'm about to go out of town. Which is weird, because I'm like, why am I giving a check to? Why is you going out of town affect me paying the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce? And so I asked Andy, I was like, isn't it okay if I just drop off the check tomorrow whenever, like, the Welcome Center opens? And he was like, I don't see a problem with that. Do you, Freeman? And Freeman's like, oh, no, tomorrow will be okay. But it was just like a really sketchy interaction, because I'm like, if I would have handed you that check, like, you know, and so that's like, okay. But I had already had stuff in my negotiations, and so we signed the contract of July. And the agreement was I would give him that first check for $25.50, my full price, just to lock in the agreement, just to show good faith. And then I offered to pay them $500 while I'm in construction, pay CAM, just because my construction workers are going to be able to use some electricity and gas, whatever, $500 a month. And so we finally signed. We were headed towards breaking ground, and then I sent you some texts. But I was at the state fair with my son. So we go. So I paid $25.50. Then I paid 3 months at $500. We're in the construction process. Things are going well. We actually did figure out how to open up to code. I have a dry fire system. I learned a lot about the building. I learned so much. I learned so much about business. It was just we're just moving as full speed ahead. So the next big thing happened that September, October. I sent you a text during the state fair. I get a text from Freeman Culver directly, and says, you've only made 3 consecutive payments of $500. Pay $6,000 something, or else, you know, I'll change the locks in 10 days. Blew my mind. That's the first time I realized that our verbal negotiations were not going to matter at all. I had been in constant contact. I mean, my space wasn't up to code. Like, why would I have to pay $2,550, which is more than any business down here besides Fat Guys pays? You know, it's a substantial. I don't know what Wanda J's, but the two restaurants that we pay the most. Anyone making money pays the most, and the people making the less are usually just getting grants. And so before I opened, so I had to back pay. So that's July, August, September, October. November. It was 7 months. 7 months I had to pay $2,550. So yeah, almost 20 grand, I think. I don't know what the math of that is, but 17,000 or something like that I paid before opening. On common areas, on the bathrooms, on the hallways. They didn't update the bathrooms. The bathrooms, they knew they had to be updated. They never did it. They had to have cleaners in the bathroom. This Juneteenth, actually, they did the vendor thing again. I was supposed to have vendors back here. They did the vendor thing again. And then they let the vendors use the building all day. And then whenever I got in here at night, because I couldn't do any day operations, because 2 of my AC units, these are my 2 brand new ones. And that's my old one that I just remodeled. So these 2 guys, they actually went out three or 4 months ago through electrical issues once they started building out the event center. But I'm just saying, like, even this Juneteenth, I couldn't open during the day. By the time I got here, the bathrooms were already trash, no TP, no anything. I actually had to run down to the event center to talk to the chamber or talk to Freeman about getting some toilet paper, paper towels, anything. I brought some paper towels to clean, so I just left them for that. And then they had a bag of toilet paper, and there were like 5 in it, 5 rolls. And they're like, well, how many do you need? I'm like, all of it, I guess. You know, this is 5 rolls. And that was Saturday, Juneteenth night. And that was the bathrooms, because and all the vendors paid $350 this year too, which is just insane. But anyways, going back to construction, leading up where construction, I ended up paying that money. There was no way around it. But then I realized what I was dealing with. The building was worse than we thought. My construction balloons. I mean, it balloons high. I don't get any knowledge on the historic landmark, anything. There's no tax credits. There's nothing. So I started in January already in debt. I had construction workers that I hadn't paid yet. They were really aware of what's going on. Patriot Construction is, they're my general contractors, and we're gonna go to court. Like, we have to go to court because I owe them, you know, so it's just all messed up right now. There's so much work that's been pulled from me to other places that, this is a hot mess. And there's a lot of good businesses that try to do good work and do good, clean work. And so your construction, so Patriot was handling my general contracting job. They started a second job, and they were helping Freeman. I was upset because we weren't hitting deadlines. I was supposed to have opened in June, then it was like November, and I'm like, if I don't open up by New Year's, like, this concept doesn't work as well. It just doesn't. The money became a huge issue at that point. And so we opened January 14th. I passed all my inspections, mechanical health. I became the first space to reach code. This was also in the same year, A New Way went through some battles with the chamber at the same time, because we had to recertify. We're CARF accredited, and so every business needs an accreditation, obviously, to whatever it does to show that it's a legitimate business. And so in order for us to work with Tulsa Public Schools, we have to be CARF accredited. It shows our agency has the high standards, national ranking standards as a mental health agency. And we had moved across the street during that time. So this is the same time I'm going through construction over here. And we just needed a certificate of occupancy. That's all we needed. And I actually sent you these texts too. You see one where I'm asking Freeman for his certificate of occupancy, and he's like, what's that? And I'm like, oh my God. And so they didn't have that. They didn't have anything. The only things that they had were things that my architect gave them. And so I'm calling, the city, trying to find stuff. They're hacked. Freeman has nothing. He doesn't understand the things that I'm asking for. And so they keep extending us, but around this time, early this year, they were like, we're done extending you. Like, give us this document or else you're done. And then they pulled our CARF accreditation. We lose everything. And so we were able to find a workaround and we called. and then called the fire department, and they sent somebody out to privately give us something that they took. But that document was never, we don't have it. And what I know now, that document can't be, we will never get that document with the state of these buildings. They're, by all intents and purposes, condemnable at this moment. And so I'm showing, so at this time, going back to January, I opened my spaces up to code. Per my agreement, I had to bring my space up to code and I have to maintain it there. So if there's a plumbing break, it's on me. If there's a electrical issue, it's on me. Anything. Act of nature, it's on me. The chamber, basically, it's as close to a 360 agreement you can get into. Chamber pretty much does nothing besides do the support and use my CAM effectively. That's all that they're owed. So my lease, which I'm sharing with you guys, is very unfair. If you look at it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, like what do you get? Not much, but I did it. And so when I first opened in January, we were already having heat issues. And so the building's heat is on an old boiler system from the 60s. There's not many people that would even want to work on this. No modern HVAC technician is going to come out and mess with this. You know, they're going to want to replace it. You know, and replacing this system is hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, upwards of $600,000 to fully replace all this. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a big number, but there's been grants that I've seen that have large numbers like that. So these projects are doable with it, and there's been money paid to do these projects. They're public. You know, you go to websites and look them up. Every time somebody gives money, they make sure there's an article about that gift. And so you can see how much money just publicly they've received. Now, private donors, that money's harder to track, but I've seen the public dollars, and it's been substantial since I started this process. And so what happens, though, is that the heat doesn't go across the entire building. There's a lot of just old ducts, old pipes that the air and the water exhaust basically run throughout the entire building. When you have an old system like this that only gets switched over once a year or twice a year, so one part of the year it gets switched from the boiler to the AC, and then in the fall it gets switched from the AC to the heat. So Oklahoma varies. That means if you have a hot day in the winter, you're hot, or if you have a cold day in the winter, or a hot day in the, you know, whatever, you're just messed up. You can't gauge the weather, ever. And so, but also you're supposed to clean the system because that heater system, that boiler system, sat for 6 months with no use or whatever, with no use. So there's a lot of dirt, there's a lot of gross stuff in these. And so they're supposed to clean these lines before switching it over. You think they do that? No, they just, you know, let's turn it over. And so what happened is that I was getting no heat when I first opened. So I'm a brand new business. I'm in the service industry. So like you only get customers one time sometimes, you know, like this matters. It's like, and so I had heating issues my first opening day. I had a group of old women that sat there, and I had to drive to my house and get a space heater, run an extension cord through there, and put the heater by their feet. These elderly women, because they were trying to support me when other people just left. Yeah. And I had just invested $500,000. And between my two businesses, giving them over $40,000 in CAM that was supposed to go to these things.
On top of paying full rent before you were even open.
Correct. So when I did open, the things that I was paying for already didn't happen. And so from then on, it's been a race to stay open. Because that was the big thing, is like, the construction company was good. They were excited about the revenue was coming in, the money was coming in, but I continued to hit hurdles as I opened. And so the heat was an issue, and then they switched to AC when it was still cold. So I was still cold for a while. Remember I think we had snow in March. So like every time that snow hit, I closed. And so, or every time it was cold, I closed. And so I was not even able to hit my hours. My staff that I had at the original time, like we were supposed to fire, you know. My GM quit. I mean, he was going through a lot of serious issues, like about the building too. And I was just like, I don't know what to tell you. This is just kind of like the nature of business on Greenwood. And this is a high-end, you know, Caucasian guy that was supposed to come in and make sure I'm hitting, you know, standards for that demographic. And he was just like, and I'm like, yeah, I know it's impossible. And so we continued, and I bumped my head. I used Starfisher at the original time of this. You know, I wanted to go back and try to be pro-Greenwood. We ran into political issues there with other groups. I mean, that was horrible. The chamber never never supported, they never came. I still reached out to them about different things I wanted to do. At this point, it was just kind of like, just keep paying your money. And then the next major update happened March this year in 2022. That was when Freeman had already seen a couple of things that I was doing back here in shows, and he was like, well, I want to do a show on Juneteenth. And I was like,
Of this year.
of this year.
Right.
This we're in 2022 now. I'm already open. We're open. I'm just kind of like, okay. I'm like, well, I'm already doing something like blah 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 blah, and it's like, okay. And so next thing you know, he walks up to me and he's like, well, I had a donation, and I have a performer, and I don't want to donate to you. And I'm like, okay, like I can work a performer in. You know, I'm throwing music events every Saturday at this point, sometimes twice a week. Like I have the market down, like everything's going great, and I'm like, okay, like I can work him in, like whatever. And so he, the next thing that happens is he sends me a contract, which I shared that email with you. And the contract, you're not allowed to share these contracts with me, so he already broke his contract by sharing with me. It's not my contract, but it has my name on it and my business. And it's from the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce / Black Wall Street Entertainment, that's an entity that I'm not familiar with. I don't know who's behind that one. I have theories, but I don't know for sure. And then it had DW Speakeasy listed as the venue, performer contract, paid in cash, everything like that. And then it had his name, Freeman Culver signed it. And I was just like, I don't know what to do about that. You know, like this is hit. And so I go and talk to him. He's like, well, this is my patio, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, well, we can do the show, but we have to go bigger. Like, we have to go bigger. There's no way. There's no way that we can that I can make money with Music Soul Child on Juneteenth, especially because I had already just wanted to throw parties. Like, I didn't even want to do music at this point because I'm like, listen, give me a DJ out here and let me just make money because there's so much traffic, just let them come and go. I also interacted with because when he first sent me that agreement, some time passed, sorry, I didn't really say that. Like, I kind of just like, I'll work him in, and then he came to me like closer to Juneteenth and we talked. But during that time, the Black Wall Street rally had already happened, and I kind of got a chance to see what my venue could do.
The bike rally?
The bike rally, yeah, the bike rally happened. And I threw a huge event. I mean, it was like, it really got a chance for me to see what my venue could do. And I was like, okay, now we're ready for Juneteenth and we're ready for Legacy Fest. Leading up to Legacy Fest actually is whenever I encountered vendor issues for the first time. For all intents and purposes, the Greenwood patio has not been used since I've gotten down here in like 5.5 years. It's never been events. The only thing is that the last Juneteenth that, what did I say, the modeling show happened, the runway show happened over there, but no one's ever used the patio. There's never been vendors back here either because there's no traffic. I was investing in shows and I already had vendors out here and I was driving traffic. So whenever I got this location, the idea was I have to bring people to the patio. I'm limited on people in here. You can only have 100 pretty much in here due to fire. You can't have over 100 people. So if you look at my capacity, it's at 99 for a reason. If you pull my pool table out of here, I no longer meet fire code because that pool table takes up 5 people's worth of space, essentially. So I would go up to 104 if you remove that. And so I'm bringing traffic back to the patio. We see it on the rally. So I make an agreement with a motorcycle group. We have an amazing private event back here where the community was able to see like, oh, we can party outside and inside. And that's the concept. And so it worked perfectly. Freeman was here when that happened. And he was watching me the whole time. He was upstairs the whole time. And so Legacy Fest, I've been a big proponent for the Greenwood District because we're a tourist district, but no one really thinks about us in different times. And so I've always tried to organize the other business owners to make sure we're on the same page and trying to like get what other districts can get. One of those things being like Saturday and Sunday, like weekends. So we have some Black Israelite business owners down here, and we have different religions and just different people. And so not all of us are open on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And so I'm like, well, I can't control other people, but I'm like, it would be good if we could all start, trying to open, but I'm like, whatever. Because I want to protect our parking, because I need our parking, but if everyone else is closed, like I can't be the only person complaining I'm this one tenant, you know. In the chamber, they're not really responsive in that regard either. And so coming up to Legacy Fest, I hear about vendors being in the patio. And I'm like, the heck? And I go to one of our business owners, and that business owner, she was a part of a couple, and her husband died. Like, and it's horrible. I feel so bad, but I can tell that like the family fell on hard times, you know. And that's what pisses me off most about Freeman, is that he takes advantage of situations, and then once someone's kind of tied in, they don't know what's going on. And so he got this business owner to be in charge of the vendors during Legacy Fest, which was completely cutting off what me and him negotiated and what I had going on, because I already had vendors and I wanted to create live music, DJ outside, and food and drink vendors. It makes sense. It's just a really fun little festive kind of farmers market vibe. Like I've seen it in Tampa. Like it's a really good energy. You know, they actually party like that in Texas as well at night. And so I'm like, and it's out in the open. So you think about COVID. I mean, it's just, the patio was the perfect area. And so during Legacy Fest, they did vendors. And so they cut off my operations again. And the person that was in charge of these vendors wasn't even open on Saturday. So I'm the only person that's working Saturday night. You know, I'm putting this money in the district. I'm trying to like get some of it back. You know, I keep just draining and draining and draining and draining. The debt's climbing. And now when I finally have vendors that I can finally put out there, and once I opened, the vendors even told her, they were like, oh, that guy back there brings us a lot of traffic. He brought us a lot of money. And I'm like, there's a reason for that. And so I'm talking to Freeman heading up to, after this, I talked to Freeman and I'm just like, hey, the Legacy Fest thing was one thing, like Juneteenth's still mine, right? I told him, I said, just trust me on Juneteenth. So my agreement is I recoup my money and I pay the $25.50 for life. And then, or for 5 years, and after I recoup my money, I pay 10% of my profit back to the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce. And so I basically have a profit sharing agreement. Because I knew I would never get an agreement if there was nothing in that language to send money back to the chamber. But I also told them that I would never write a check from like DW to, you know, Freeman Culver. It would always be the Speakeasy to the chamber. I wanted those agreements there. And so leading up to Juneteenth, I tell Freeman, I'm like, hey, like, you have got to let me control my operations back here. You're not going to make any money. Like, you're not making any money. Like, it's hurting everything. It's messing up. Like, if you just let me run my stuff like normal, what you get with your 10% will be enough. And he has told me at that point, he's like, look, I haven't already charged you. I already like came for my 10%. I'm like, it's not what it says. I never continue my money. Like, I'm like in debt. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I was just like, you have to come into this. Like, you have to come into this. And so Freeman was just like, okay, well, what do I need to do? And I'm like, you got to come into this. Like, you have to pay for this too. Like, the chamber has to pay into this. And so he was just like, well, do I need to write you a check? And I said, no, write the check between the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce and DW Speakeasy. And I'll cash it with that, and I'll get our, and I said, and I'll get the event, yeah, I know. But that's what we're supposed to do. Like, I can spend the money. I had all the stage was there. The barriers, the lights, like everything the block needed was supposed to come there. I had bought extra alcohol. Like, we had there was a substantial whatever. And honestly, my alcohol shipment alone was $8,000. And so it was, and I told them alcohol and food and drinks, that's all. And I said, and I have vendors who will sell food and drinks and we can get 15 to 20%. I would get 15 to 20%. So the amount of money that this would generate would not only give you a bigger kickback than whatever the hell you have planned, but it would also allow us to set the stage, because I'm trying to formulate an Oktoberfest. So I've been trying to put together a Black Wall Street Oktoberfest for the past 2 years. And I'm like, we have to get it started. So we can start it right here. Juneteenth's not our permit. And so we could get a new permit in the fall and do our own thing on our block in October. And it's going to be cooler. It's going to be better. Cooler as in temperature. And so that'll be good. So take his $5,000, cash it in my account, buy the stuff. He then, at this point, reaches out to me, is it via text? I want to get this part right. He comes in, no, it's in person. So I'm passing him in person on the sidewalk, and so I'm telling him, I was in negotiation with T-Pain, and I'm like, I was trying to bring T-Pain, and I'm like, T-Pain's gonna be expensive, you know, I can't tell you he was great, but he's gonna be a little bit more than Mario, but T-Pain would have been great. Like I sent him the actual plan, I think I sent you what I sent him to when it came to the plan for T-Pain. I was gonna bring back Mario on that Friday for him to return the key to Greenwood, and I was gonna, which I thought was gonna be great, like, return the key. It was gonna be a good show. Return the key, and as well as T-Pain. And then he was working on getting us on the special event permit, so we could do something else like this year. And so leading up to this, he doesn't get on the permit. I found out that he tells the Juneteenth people that all of attendance voted no against being a part of Juneteenth. We didn't pay to get on we didn't pay. So like we just didn't pay. Like we didn't, but I would have paid, and we all know we would have paid. So leading into this, like everything's already falling apart. I tell Freeman, I'm like, and I find out that he did vendors again for my patio. They start selling vendor spots for $350 for Juneteenth. And so I'm like, if we try to throw this show, if I go in $50,000 to $60,000 on these performers, and I don't get my boundary again, I don't get to sell my stuff the same way, because some of those stations were going to be alcohol stations. The way I was able to set up the patio with my patio door, like it was the perfect thing that I ran through Able and everything. I could serve alcohol on the patio. I mean, it was literally, it was what you wanted. I mean, it was a great area. So no matter what we did anywhere else, like that could just be like just a drinking station. I mean, and so it was going to be perfect. And so I was like, I need every person to stand there. So like if I can get 200 people on my patio and you put vendors, those are my customers gone. Like I have to control that money, I won't get it back. And so I was like, we can't do the show. Like we cannot do the show. Like we can't do the show. And so he comes in person and I'm just like, you can't do the show. I said, if you guys want to put up more money, then we can do the show. But like I'm not going in $20,000 to $30,000 in debt again. It's not happening. It's not happening. And especially whenever I can just bring out a DJ and do a concert every night. And so I was like, I'm sorry, like your performer can't like perform back here. And then he was just like, my performer's gonna perform back there. My contract's already signed. And I was like, okay, bet. And so the next thing you know is like he sends me, nothing happens. And he's like, well, you have time to figure it out. And then he sends me a text with that flyer, and I share this text with you. And the flyer has the performer, it has my speakeasy location. It says all the vendors get free admittance to the speakeasy, which like I'm charging everybody $10. Like there was no way, because I'm also securing this. So that was another big thing that I've argued about this Juneteenth is once he started throwing nightlife events over there, even on this Juneteenth, it's bringing traffic to the area. We don't have adequate lighting. I'm not getting the support outside my patio, so it's dangerous. And I'll get to that too, because we actually had a shooting on Greenwood 1 hour and 15 minutes into Juneteenth this year. And the window was actually hit. But I'll get to that too. And so leading up to this, I was like, there's no way. I'm pulling out. I said, I'm already drowning. You're going to cost me money. Like, I'm not going to do it. Like, I can't. This music, soul child stuff. And that flyer had sponsors, which meant that he got money to throw the show. And I didn't. I saw 5,000 of it, and I still have $8,000 of liquor in my back, in my office right now, just like sitting there from this. And so, but at the same time, I wasn't gonna do the show. And so he sends me that text. I was like, we can't do this. And I call him, I'm like, we can't do this. And flyers are literally like, as a venue, if I put a flyer and it has my information on it, like I have to honor that. It's a legal document. So if I have a drink special and it says $3 Bud Lights, and you come in here and they're $5, you can call Able, and then that can actually get me a fine, because you choosing me for that $3 took business from somewhere else. So you're not allowed to lie on those things, because then it would be horrible. And so so I tell Freeman like no to that, and he was just like, well, call me later and tell me what needs to change on the flyer. And I'm just sitting there like, I don't know what to say. Like, I didn't say anything. I didn't call him back. I'm just like, I can't do the show. And the flyer also had the performer going on at 10 p.m. when Drew Hill with the Juneteenth stage was going on at 10 p.m. And I'm like, you can't even push this. Like, if you post this flyer, like, people are going to think that I'm attacking Juneteenth, I'm gonna get less traffic on all the days. Like, you don't understand how people work, you don't understand how promotions are working, like alcohol sales, security, like you don't understand any of it. You're not a promoter. Like, and now you're trying to get into promotions and events because you see me making money here. But I invested in the building to start this. And so even leading up to Juneteenth again, they started construction on that event center in like April or so. And I had my two AC units went out. One started clicking, the other one just went out, and I had to turn it off because it was clicking so loud. I call Eddie Grooms or something like that. That's the AC guy. It's the only AC guy that will work on the buildings. I pay the contractors. I've sent receipts, and I can send plenty of financials. Like, I will pay him to do something, but then he does other stuff. And so Eddie comes in here the first time and he fixes it. Everything's going good again. So I got Eddie on record making everything good. He's like, something's tripping back there. I fixed it. The next time he comes out, he was just like, things are wired different back here. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, things are wired different back here. Did you have an electrician in here? And I'm like, no, like my stuff's been done. Like the only person that's ever touched my equipment. He's like, well, something's back here is tripped and it's blown now. And it was causing something in the back of the building, something up in the system to mess up, which then made my stuff mess up. And so I'm like, okay, we'll fix it. And so we go back to the panels and they're all different. My whole panel's blown. And so I put a fresh panel in whenever I did my construction, and that's when I see my panel blown. And then I'm like, well, can we turn it back on? And he's just like, I don't want somebody to die. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, if I turn this back on, somebody over there can get shot because they don't know it's on again. And I'm like, so it is then, you know? So he's like, you gotta call a building electrician because this is out of my hands. And I've already paid him multiple times. And so that's when I found out that these two were blown and that electricity had been rewired. I had seen some of the subs that had been on my job here working on over there too, some of the same people. They did some of that construction, supported it over there. A lot of people watched that construction get done. They knew it was not okay. The most emotional part about that piece of construction though that I need to cover too is that there was somebody that tried to come in here and open up a jazz hall right before I opened up too, and his name was Scotty. He actually came in here right after I opened, and I was like, I've never seen somebody look so sad. I mean, like, I could still see how sad he looked in his eyes because, like, this is what he wanted to open. He went into what he thought a really good deal with the chamber. He actually started building in here. When I first came in here, there was a bar. You could actually see kind of an outline on the ground. That's Scotty's bar. And so he had this bar built out, already started right there. I got into a huge argument whenever I started my first demolition because basically Larry Tees he was just like, oh, you know, you can't destroy the bar because it's Scotty. And I'm like, okay. And so I lost an entire day for them trying to get this bar out for Scotty. And I was like, okay, like I'm going to do that because like this guy lost everything. He ended up having a stroke, by the way. During this process, what he was going through with the chamber is similar to what I'm going through with him now. He had a stroke, a traumatic brain injury, and a lot of people around him say that, you know, he's different. And he actually has a strong claim for this space. They actually shouldn't have even given me the space based off of Scotty's claim. He has legal things in place with the chamber that they should have never given me this. I know this now. But anyway, we lost an entire day because of that bar. And I wanted to go back to Scotty, and that bar is cut in half currently, and it's in the event center that the chamber has over there on Suite 100. So Scotty's bar is cut in half. And I'm sitting there, and I saw that in there, and I'm just kind of like, you guys really don't care. I mean, you don't care about us, like you don't really care about anything. And so basically how the story ends is I make it past Juneteenth, you know, debt's rising, I have one AC unit left. It drips a lot of water on my pool table and just because it can't be pushed. I switched all my operations to late. I don't open up my garage door till 9. And I want to say June 25th or whatever, a couple of Saturdays ago, I was having a Tammy Hamilton show. It was great, sold out that Saturday. And the Friday before, there was a private event going on in the event space. And with the electric going in my space, and that it blew the last fuser panel, and my last AC unit went out. And I know that any fixing of anything is a substantial thing. You can't keep. There's no more there's no more Band-Aids to put on the dam, you know? And so I had to cancel that show I tried to do the show on Saturday. Me and some other people came here and looked at breakers. We tried to do whatever we could do, and we canceled that day. I still had to pay the band their deposit. You know, I still paid out $600, and we reached out to Freeman. He sent the other guy a text that had Eddie's. It said, call Eddie on Monday, and his number. And the emails that I've sent is talk to Andy Caldwell. Andy Caldwell's like, I'm not even the property manager. I haven't signed the agreement. Any confrontation of Freeman has nothing to do with the chamber. And so that left me with no option but to close. And now I have all these fees and everything. And so I decided it's time for a lawsuit. And so I've just been so tired. I took like a week just to sleep. I mean, I was tired. I had been running and dealing with the stress like every week. And so I took a week, and then I started talking to a couple of community people. I knew that once I went public that it would cause kind of a shitstorm, you know, and so I knew that would affect the community in a way that I didn't want it to. I never really wanted to go public. I really didn't want to ever have to sue. I didn't want to do any of it, honestly. And so then a new way happened again. A new way flooded over July 4th. And we called, my business partner called Larry to see what we can do. And she's like, our office is flooding. We pay our own cleaners, by the way, to come in and clean our spaces. We technically are supposed to be getting that per the building, per our CAM agreement. But our cleaner was like, hey, this is flooding. They just have buckets here. I have a video to send to you about what our office looked like at that moment, and it's still bad. And it was flooding, so she called me, and he's like, well, we can have Dennis come over tomorrow. Dennis being the guy that stole and broke stuff from us. And so my business partner was like, Dennis is not welcome, like, in my business. Like, are you kidding me? And he said, well, I don't know what you want me to do about it then. And she was just like, well, there's flooding happening in the building right now, and we don't want you to have to pay more than you want. And he's just like, I don't know what you want me to do. And we had already had tiles missing for the past 6 months from the last time it flooded when they switched the system over 6 months ago. And so after that happened, I was like, you know, a new way's been here for 12 years. It's not getting respect. I invested over here. Like, this is going to continue to happen. Like, this is a mess. Like, it's just a mess. Like, I feel like even to explain what happened to me, I mean, it took an hour. It took just to go through all the little pieces, all the people. And then once it came down to a lawsuit, once I actually went and got legal advice, they were like, it's going to cost me $6 to 10 grand just to get the right motions out. Because there's so many parties involved. How you sue a nonprofit is different than a for-profit. How you sue Freeman Culver is different how you would sue some Evans or somebody else behind the scenes. Like, and I have no idea how many proxy people are here. And so basically my attorney was like, hey, everybody that comes in here and talks to me wants to go to Tulsa World. They want to go talk to the meetings. And I told them all no and stupid. He said, you're the first person, or that's step one. Because he said, I don't even know who to sue. And so honestly, like, and on top of that, as I was reaching out to attorneys, I actually contacted Scotty's attorney accidentally. Because he was a good attorney. And I called him and he's like, hey, are you trying to open the space back here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, well, I have a former client with the exact same claim and like, it's pretty strong. And so I'm like, and he's like, so I can't, although you might align, essentially our claims could run competitively to each other. And so on top of this, there's clauses in our leases. There's a couple that I'll share, but I'm going to share these clauses because they're huge. And that there's a condemnation clause that if these buildings get condemned, they don't have to pay us anything. There's no buyout, there's no payout to the business owners. They basically just take our stuff and go. If they sell the buildings, the same thing happens too. Because they're not owned by a nonprofit, a sale can happen. A sale is plausible that can happen. The agreement even says that the sale can be based off an evaluation of our businesses that we can't stop. So essentially, if they want to come in and bring some people in here to sell the building, I can't stop that. I have to support it, and I don't get a cut of that sale. And so there's a lot of business owners in these buildings right now. We know the AC is not working. We know the issues are here. We know there's not any more grants. It's all been pocketed. It's all been who knows where, honestly. It's behind some ambiguous triple-headed monster, two for-profits, one nonprofit entity that receives funds from this business that I've seen and that I've seen show up on agreements. And so that's an issue. That's an issue that makes me want to go public, because as I've been here for 6 years, as I've studied since I was 19, what happened here and what goes on with these types of situations, like the last remaining business owners that are in this historic area, in these Greenwood Chamber businesses or buildings, we're about to get displaced. And like, I can just see it. My lawsuit alone, but there, as I see how many other lawsuits, how many other people, my attorney said that a sale of these buildings would take over 6 months, that transaction, because there are so many liens, there are so many groups that are going to sweep in and sue for that, that it's going to be bad. And so if they sell these buildings in a weird way, there's not enough money to go around. So what would happen to us? And so that's kind of where somebody has to take them to court. Like, I have to take them to court. There's a lien out on the buildings per my agreement with York right now. That's substantial. That's probably the biggest legal weakness of my entire situation. Yeah, I owe Patriot Construction, owes York Mechanical quite a bit of money. I think it's like $60,000. And so some things didn't get paid. So I have a legal battle with them to kind of see where my money went over there, because Patriot was another company involved with multiple groups down here. And so it's just a mess that needs to be kind of brought in court. Discoveries need to be happened. My attorney basically told me that I have claims, like for instance, my AC being off, shut my business down. There's a lawsuit there, but that lawsuit doesn't uncover embezzlement. It doesn't uncover the scope of what happens down here. I don't have the details. I don't know who to sue. And so I'm hoping that this article, my enemies are already there, you know, like the people that are in bed with such a corrupt organization that exists still, the people that are getting money remotely, who knows, you know, like they're gonna be there. But the people that have been burned like me, they're out there too. The allies, you know, I could potentially find legal help that is superior to my legal help that I have right now. There's a lot that can take place, but I know that this battle is going to be pretty messy, based off of what I've experienced with Freeman Culver. I can't speak for the rest of the chamber. I've never been allowed to talk to the rest of the chamber. I've never been reached out to by the rest of the chamber either, but I know he's going to throw under the bus previous administration. That's what he's done historically as well. And so I just basically need help, because this is a community issue, and I'm in the middle of it, and I don't really have a way out, honestly. I had some, I thought that I could just keep paying and just keep paying and keep paying, and eventually it would be good. Leading up to Juneteenth, not only did I have that show on Saturday, but he booked a show through Starfisher on my Friday on my patio. There's other events booked on the patio coming up. And so even as I was getting further investors to come in and just pay more money, honestly, and support what I'm doing, they see what's happened. They know the buildings are condemnable, and they know that they, like, would you give me $200,000 if you know that somebody can slip in an event center and it's not up to code, and then the person responsible can't pay that, and the buildings will get condemned immediately. Like, it's like, we're just so close. We're just so close. And so that's why, I don't know. I just think that all I can do is send out my perspective, you know, my experience, the things that I did, that, you know, some of the things I would do differently, you know, 100%. I feel like I was the only person dumb enough to come here and trust these people, honestly. And I've heard that a lot of times from a lot of customers. There was a time where I was arguing with Freeman just right outside of my place, and I'm like, the community can come back. Because this was whenever I wanted him to give the key back to Mario. And I'm like, you have to do it. You know, you have to, like, a town hall meeting, like, donate one of these spaces to a young entrepreneur, do something. And he asked me a question. He told me something. He said, don't be Mandela to these people. And I'm like, excuse me? He's like, don't be Mandela to these people. And I'm like, our community will come back to Greenwood if you stop doing stuff like this. Like, they will come back. They're already coming back. And they were coming back. Just the other entrepreneurs that I had, I mean, I saw hustles coming. I had someone pull up, and he was selling cupcakes, you know? And then 3 weeks later, he's pulling up in a wagon that's lit up selling cupcakes. And I'm like, this is something, you know? There was so much positivity. I didn't have any issues. Juneteenth, I mentioned the shooting. I have to cover that real fast. that Sunday, it was the first Juneteenth that was a federal holiday, so we didn't have work on Monday. So much like Memorial Day, Sunday could be a party night. And so I was like, this is perfect. There's a lot of day parties, I was like, come back here. We were having lighting issues I scheduled this before we knew the lighting issues happened. Lighting issues happened, we found out about those on Thursday. And I sent Freeman a text on Friday. I gave you guys that, got no response. Ty from Wanda J's ended up buying some lights that he put up in the middle. And I had some lights that I put on outside of mine, but it was dark. Freeman was throwing events over there. Everyone was throwing events. There's a lot of traffic. There were a lot of guns on our street, both from teenagers and adults. Everybody saw that, we witnessed it. It was scary, it was dangerous. And then that Sunday, I'm throwing my thing. We had a group of guys that we kicked out. And so I was like, we were already kind of a little bit on edge because we never had to really tell anybody to leave or remove anybody, but we attracted some people that night. Where really the sun was still out. And so my security came up to me. We have armed security because the patio area is mine. And so I make sure that if you come to DW's, if you come to this patio whenever I'm in control of it, it's safe. Can I speak for it any other time? I can. And so my armed security comes up to me and said, hey, we have these 2 cars circling the block. This is 11 or 12. It's like, we're kind of worried. We've seen them, like it could be dangerous. And I'm like, okay. I actually called 911. I guess it wasn't an emergency, so I called non-dispatch. And they're like, okay, what do you need? And I'm like, well, there's 2 cars circling the block. It's Juneteenth. I'm the only nightclub downtown open right now. The block is dark. There's not a lot of support. Like I feel I'm releasing my traffic. Like we're shutting down. We're doing last call soon. We're shutting down before 1. Can you get somebody to circle the block, or at least just make it present so these cars won't do anything? They're like, okay, we'll look into it, but we have higher priority calls. Like, we'll see you when we see you. And like, oh, they asked me, do I want to make contact, or they want an officer to come and talk to me? And I'm like, no, I'm a black-owned business. Like, my customers probably wouldn't like cops coming back here. But at the same time, like, your presence is definitely welcome, and I need you on the street. And so that call was made at like 12:45, I believe. And we shut down at like 12:50, 12:55. Most people were gone by 1, besides people that were still eating at the vendors. And then at 1:15, we started hearing gunshots that were far away, but then got closer and closer. I'm a legal gun carrier. I'm armed when I'm here. I pulled my firearm. My security pulled our firearm. We got everybody to come back, and I actually have video of this piece of us running back. I opened my door. We got all the rest of everyone that we could back in here, and then we closed the door and we were prepared, but no one ever came after that. And so we went out there. Car was shot up. Another car was shot up. One car left because they didn't want their car getting taken for investigations. I guess if your car gets shot up, they'll take your car and then keep it for a long time, pulling bullets out and stuff. And so they left. And then T's barbershop got hit. A bullet ricocheted and broke the window. And I mean, when I saw that, like it was emotional. It was very emotional. Tulsa police responded at 1:45. An hour after I made that call. That's the only reason why that wasn't posted on Facebook. Because I know the police department would have posted that story. I mean, you had a shooting on Greenwood, but I also think they had some heart because I asked permission to go to the crime scene and fix the window. I taped, cardboard up, cut my hand, but I taped cardboard up there, and then I had City Glass come out whenever the business opened on Tuesday. They were closed on Monday for Juneteenth. They came out on Tuesday, got specs, and I paid for that. And so whenever that glass comes in, they're going to come and repair T's barbershop. But that was another contributing factor to why I was feeling a lot less safe in this district, because these were issues that were continuing to pile on. Other events are going on my block now. There's not lighting, and so so that Saturday, whenever the AC was out, we closed.